There you go. You're in line mute.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Mentors on Tap. This is our 23rd episode. I'm Doc Sheldon, and that's my mate and partner and buddy, Steve Gerencher. And we're going to talk today about crawling and things that get in the way of getting all your pages crawled and indexed, and things you got to check if you're having problems there. And I think, too, we might touch just a little bit on the idea of crawl budget because there seems to be some misinformation about it. But let Steve say good morning and then we'll launch.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, crawl budget. That's one of them weird topics that for a long time people are like, oh no, pay attention to your crawl budget. Then you find out they've got like 12 pages on their website. So, I don't think that's a problem for you. My personal perspective on this is a lot like the origins of page speed. Is all of this is about Google and their costs. Bandwidth is expensive, even when you're Google, especially when you're Google. So when you're crawling websites, you don't want to waste a whole lot of your effort recrawling the same things over and over and over again, or you want people to speed up their websites so you're using less bandwidth. That's how I've always viewed all of these issues personally. And it's just a way of Google forcing webmasters to help Google lower its cost.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think that, if you're at Amazon, crawl budget is an issue. If you're a mom and pop blog, 20, 30, 200, 500, 1,200 pages, you're not going to run out of crawl budget. Now, that doesn't mean you can't run into crawl issues, because an awful lot of operator errors can prevent pages from getting crawled. And if they don't get crawled, then they're not going to get indexed. So, and that's one of the things that I wanted to touch on. I see so many people talking about crawl and index as though it's the same thing, and it isn't.
Right.
Crawling, the spiders go out and find pages. In the olden days, they would find a page and then they would come back and tell Daddy they found a page, and you might want to send the indexer out there sometime. Now it's generally just a simultaneous thing. Now,
right.
My guess is that the spiders are actually doing both, but they may just be, they may have an indexer tagging along every time they go on a crawl. They just may be a bunch of indexers on call. I don't know, but it's almost a simultaneous thing. And so don't look at it as one function, though, because you can get your pages crawled and not get indexed. 9 times out of 10, that's going to be because of something you did.
Right. Well, and that's, when it comes to indexing, I mean, I'm shocked at how many people say that their site's not indexed and you go to the robots.txt and they've got it blocked. It just baffles me how it could be such a high percentage of people who were smart enough to put that in place while they were building their website, and then B, not take it out when they launch their website.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would, I have seen an awful lot of new site owners that decided to go ahead and jump into WordPress and do their own launch and build their own site that started out with the thing. They didn't even realize they could block it from crawling. So they have all these different iterations that they're going through as they're trying to decide how they want their site to look. They may go through 17 different themes, and they're all getting crawled.
Yeah,
it is something that needs to be set up properly, and the people that fail to take that out of their robots text when they launch the site, That's just, that's a belly laugh there. I can't help myself. I'm going to laugh right in their face.
At least it's an easy solution.
Yeah.
There are other issues where people have confusing 301 redirects in place, or even 302s, that trap the crawlers in weird loops, or they've got a stack of 301s where the same page may have been moved 4, 5, 6, 10 times, and they just keep adding to the 301 redirect rather than cleaning up all that navigation. At a certain point, you really don't need to keep a 301 from a page that stopped existing 3 years ago or 4 years ago or whatever. Those can all be cleaned and purged. Google should not be looking for those at any point unless you still have menus or links pointing to them.
Well, to me, I normally would not. I still wouldn't use a chain. I mean, if you've got 5 redirects in there, there's no reason in the world not to go from number 1 to number 5 rather than going through all 5 of them. It's just
right.
It's just idiotic and it's costly. It's not there. Everybody's hosting contract does not give them that so-called unlimited bandwidth. Some people actually have to pay for bandwidth, and particularly, not in the U.S. so much. It's a relatively rare thing to see a hosting company here charging by the byte. But there are many countries where they do pay, and they give you a budget. And I think you're even on a limitation with your ISP for bandwidth. So so that's also an issue. So when you've got got a site that redirecting through all these different loops, or worse, in a loop, you're not only possibly hurting your own pocketbook, you're also affecting any users out there that might be in a rural setting where they're having to, they have a low-level ISP and they're having to pay, or they're budgeting their time. They run out of time on their plan.
Yeah.
And if that was they had planned to buy your product, well, for you,
And it could be, one of the other issues is it does become a server load issue.
Oh, sure.
Especially if, I've seen htaccess files that are 10, 12,000 lines of redirects. Mm-hmm. And it takes a long time to process that on every single hit to the server because it gets processed. Yep. And it's usually something that when you start looking at it could have been done with a few lines of code rather than individually listing out each page. Or they've become these giant redirect loops where you've got, like I said, a chain that's 5 or 6, 7 long, and they don't clean that up from front to back. So all these issues affect how often or how deeply you're going to get crawled or indexed, which can cause problems for your website because you can't be found if you're not in the index.
That's a fact. And something else too, it kind of goes hand in hand with the page speed question that you mentioned early on. If you've got massive images and you've got yourself an art site or a photography site and you're loading 36 high-res images on the page, it's probably going to time out the crawl because they're looking for links, obviously, but they're also looking at those images. They're looking at the EXIF data. They're looking at any text that's in those images. They're reading a whole lot more than just the fact that this is a block called, it's a JPEG file or a PNG file. Mm-hmm. They're looking at it in some detail. If they have to look at a lot of them, you are consuming some of your crawl budget there. They're there for some block of time. What that is going to be for every given site, we poor humans don't know that, but they are there for a given block of time. And if you're consuming that time with redirects, with massive unoptimized images, with loops, or chains, then yeah, you could be a 1,000-page site that actually does have a crawl budget issue. But again, it's because it's something you did, it's something you caused. And
Right.
it wasn't too long ago, I think just a couple weeks ago, that John Mueller said again, he was asked a specific question about call budget, and he specifically said that, you know, the vast majority of sites, if they're not a huge e-commerce site, they don't have to be concerned with crawl budget.
Right.
And it's not
I
the
mean,
first.
you've got,
Go ahead.
and it's true. You've got sites like, you know, Amazon or eBay or Realtor.com that have not only tens of thousands of pages, but tens of thousands of pages that are constantly changing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're always adding and removing, and it gets to the point where it becomes a serious issue. And unfortunately, we see too many people with smaller websites, as you said, that are worried about this, and trying to convince them to move on to something that actually means more can be a challenge, because somewhere along the line they heard that crawl budget was going to be a problem. And in the old days it was, because of bandwidth and speed issues.
Well, a lot of things have changed over the last 20 years. You know, it's just, yeah,
Yeah.
there was a point that crawl budget was an issue for just about any site, but no longer. You know, if you've got
That brings us back to
pages, maybe.
It brings us back to SEO blog posts that should auto expire. They should just have a time limit on them, and after so many years, it just vanishes from the internet because it's probably no longer valid.
Yeah, yeah. Even if it's got links, they've probably been so degraded that they're not worth much.
Yeah.
Well, some of the things you need to check, you know, if the other thing is too that if you have anything that's going to frustrate those spiders, like, you know, if you've got 18-second TTBF from your host, you probably ought to be looking for a new host if that happens more than once or twice. But you know, if you've got connectivity issues there, trying to get response back from your servers, that's going to frustrate those. Like I say, you got a block of time there. They're not charging by the step or by the mile. They're charging in nanoseconds, I would assume, maybe milliseconds, and they're gonna donate so many seconds of time to crawling your site. And if they're having to use a large block of that, waiting for your server to kick back some information, you're going to lose on that. So you need to look at the responses that you're getting on your server, and then also what you're sending. So that's where I see where page speed can be more important, because it can have an impact on your crawl time. The problem is we have no idea what that crawl time is, and we probably will never be given that information. So, you know, I don't know if they're putting 5 seconds to a new site or 5 minutes to a new site. You know, no idea.
I mean, I personally, I've gotten to the point now with it's like we use crawling as like a canary in the cave kind of deal, or canary in the mine issue, where if you look at somebody's website and you know they've got 2,000 or 3,000 pages, but the crawler's only hitting them 200 times a month, that starts to tell you that there's an issue somewhere in the structure of the website that is causing the crawlers to move on and not see all this other content. Whether it's a technical issue or a algorithmic issue, or maybe, you know, there's so many things it could be, but it's at least it's an indicator that you have a problem. They're not going to necessarily crawl every single one of your pages every single time they visit, and I wouldn't expect them to, but I would start looking at, you know, if the crawler's only hitting you for 10% of your pages on a monthly basis, there's definitely something that needs to be looked at, and it needs to be looked at pretty soon, because you've got all this other content sitting there that is effectively invisible.
Yeah, and there, you know, Google has a tool in the Webmaster Tools. There's a robots testing tool that will, you can run that on your robots text file through there, and it'll tell you if there's any issues there. There's other, third-party tools out there that can point to things. This is one of the areas, though, that I think, if you found that you do have a crawl problem, this is one of the areas that I think you're really not well advised. If you're not already knowledgeable about the technical aspects of SEO, you're not well advised deciding to try to do this yourself, because you can't afford to be out of the index loop for any protracted period. If you're running a business, you need to be back in the SERPs. And so I would suggest you get a professional to take a look at it. And most professional SEOs are going to be able to take a quick look and find the issue. The fix may or may not be that easy, but they'll at least know, okay, you've got this issue. One of the things that and we all see it, you've got a site that the customer brings a site to you, they've got 1,200 pages, and then you run a scan on it, and you find 1.2 million. Okay.
Yeah.
That's because something is generating duplicate, time after time. And so that's going to have an effect on your crawl budget. That's not the kind of thing that's going to get fixed in 5 minutes. It's not as easy as just killing a line in your robot text file.
Right.
And there are, unfortunately, there are plugins out there that for WordPress sites that do that. And they don't bother to tell that to, but when it's really nice to have site search. If you're selling products and you're running a WordPress site with an e-com, you want to have a product search by category and give them a site searchability on your site. But if every time that you get a search, it's dropping 3 more URLs into the hopper, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And if you're doing it's a problem pretty quick.
Some of the worst offenders of this are certain types of e-commerce websites that will generate a new URL for every single product variant.
Yep.
So if you sell t-shirts and you've got 6 sizes and 12 colors, you suddenly have, I don't know, I don't do the math in my head, but a whole lot of, different page URLs that were generated for no good reason, other than that's the way the programmer for that e-commerce site thought it should be done.
Yep, that happens, unfortunately.
Yeah,
much more than it should. So there's other things you can look at, ways that the spiders get blocked, ways that you're consuming their crawl time with things that you don't want crawled. You can go into Search Console. That's another thing you need to check. If hopefully you have a sitemap XML file uploaded, make sure it can read it. I get that a lot with new clients, that they've got an XML sitemap that was uploaded a year and a half ago, and Google has been telling them ever since, we can't read this.
Yeah.
Nobody bothered to see that. Nobody bothered to notice. And unfortunately, my buddy Yoast out there has a WordPress plugin that has had issues with that. They generate sitemaps that can't be read. Now, I don't think you do it anymore. Okay, I think they've got that fixed, but it was generating sitemaps that couldn't be read. And so don't just click the button and say, okay, now I've got a sitemap. Go check it.
Well, I uploaded it. It should be fine.
Yeah, unfortunately. And it may not be the fault of that plugin. It could just be a conflict with something else you already have installed.
Well, and signing up for the Search Console is something that everybody should be doing. I'm constantly amazed that, it's a great free product from Google. It's not going anywhere. And it's usually the first thing that tells you that you have an issue with your website. I get those emails on client sites all the time when, they're rooting around and stuff, and all of a sudden I get an alert from Search Console saying, we're having an issue with your mobility or whatever, with your, the mobile version of your website. And it's like, hey, what did you guys do over there? I'm showing that, you've had 600 pages drop out of the index all of a sudden. Why? So making sure you have that Search Console set up which for most SEOs is a normal, part of business, but for how many website owners even know that exists?
Yeah. And yeah, another thing that should always be on too is Google Analytics. You want to have some sort of analysis, ongoing live analysis of what's happening on your website. Where are your visitors coming from? How long are they staying? What pages are they going to? Or are they just backing out and leaving? If you don't have the ability to see that information, obviously the most important thing is the deposits you're making in your bank account. But if those deposits aren't coming, it's really nice to try to be able to figure out why.
Yeah.
And analytics, and you don't have to use Google Analytics. There are other analytics programs out there that are good, but
yeah,
Google is free, and it's pretty good. So why would you?
It works for most. It works for most people.
Yeah. So check your status of your crawl and see, are you getting crawled? Are you getting crawled much less than you should be? That probably indicates a problem. Right? Look at the status codes that are being returned. Google will tell you if they go to crawl and they're getting some odd, 503s or 500s. That's something you need to take a look at your server and figure out what's happening. You may need a pro to help you to go into your server logs, but it's something that needs to be looked at because something is wrong. When the search engine, which is capable of overcoming unbelievable hurdles, if they can't get into your site for some reason, you need to fix it.
Or they can't get out.
Well, that can happen too. They get into a loop and they're stuck. They'll stop coming. They'll stop knocking on your door if they don't like what they see in there.
Yeah.
That's about all I got. Actually, nothing else that comes to mind on the crawl. Just you want to Google get in there.
There's a lot of little things you can do to clean up some of this stuff. But like I said, for the grand scheme of things, for the vast majority of people, I don't know that it's a huge issue, especially if you're only running a few hundred or thousand web pages. You generally don't have to worry about it too much. But like I said, as a indicator, it's like if you've got 1,000 web pages and you're only getting crawled 200 times a month, then either Google has decided that your other 800 pages are junk, which, if they've decided your stuff is crap, they will not crawl it. But for the most part, it generally means you have a structural issue with the website or you're doing something that's causing a problem.
Another issue that can come up too, that I've seen when people are using pagination, incorrectly implementing their canonicals.
Yeah.
Basically, they're creating a loop, and it's going to stymie the crawling of the pages you want crawled. You're going to be not getting the pages that you really want indexed. And
that would be most Shopify sites.
Yeah, there you go.
Their canonical structure is just baffling.
A lot about Shopify is baffling. Starting with, why would anybody use it, in my mind's eye, but... The other thing that I have not seen personally, but I know somebody mentioned to me not too long ago, that somebody just goes nuts and starts creating parameters in their Google Search Console, setting hundreds of parameters. It's generating new URLs. Okay, that can have effect on your crawl. And why would you want to do that? You're not looking at that. I guarantee you, nobody that's doing that is looking at all that information, unless they're maybe a tech SEO and he's running some tests and just trying to learn what they're doing. But no site owner is going to look at that depth of information. And you're just that and non-rendering scripts. That can
Yeah.
create problems too.
Some of those are hard to fix.
Couple, they can be tricky, yeah. So, you know, if you're not getting crawled, if you're putting up new pages and you're not seeing them in the index, you know, there's some things you can check to determine whether or not you might have a problem. If it looks like it's over your head, don't get too nuts in there by yourself. You know, find yourself a pro to help you out, because you can make things worse. And unfortunately, you know, just like with a lot of things, when you go to YouTube and say how to fix this, how to do that, you'll find 65 different ways to boil an egg. And some of them involve a frying pan. Okay, so don't trust everything that you see on YouTube.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway, we thank you for stopping by, and we shall see you again
Definitely.
next week for episode 24, which we haven't decided yet what it's going to be about. But then we didn't decide what this was going to be about until about 15 minutes ago.
Maybe we'll talk about some of our most entertaining clients.
Ooh. Name and shame?
That could be a multi-hour, multi-episode.
I was going to say, that might be several episodes right there. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Have a good week.